Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nahmaduhu nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. Amma ba'd, fa'uzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Assalatu wassalamu ala rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We praise Allah. We praise Allah as much as the number of His creation, as much as pleases Him, as much as the weight of His throne, and as much as the ink of His words. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi adada khalki wa riza nafsi wa zinata arshi wa midada kalimati. First of all, I will quickly, time constraint, I'll quickly go over the highlights of last week and then get into today's topic. Last week's topic was fasting, on fasting from Muslim and Bukhari. And today's topic is the benefits of fasting. So we couldn't go over the highlights so very quickly, just as a sort of revision. So first of all, we talked about some virtues of fasting. So I'll not go over the virtues of fasting. We talked about that in the previous week. So etiquette, in terms of etiquettes of fasting, one of the things we said was that we neither indulge in obscene language nor raise the voice nor do any act of ignorance. If one forgets that he's fasting and eats or drinks, he should complete his fast. The various fasts are 3 days of fasting every month, Mondays and Thursdays, Arafah. By the way, Mondays and Thursdays, it is Mondays from Muslim or Bukhari, I forgot, but Thursday is from Tirmizi and Ibn Majah, to my recollection. Fasting on Arafah, 9th of Zilhajj, on the day of Ashura, 10th of Muharram, and fasting in Shaban as much as we can, as Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam fasted in the month of Shaban more than in any other month except Ramadan. No fast right before Ramadan, 1 or 2 days before Ramadan, unless one is used to fasting on Friday. What did we want to say about fasting? Yeah, do not fast on Friday if you do not fast 1 day before or 1 day after. Or do not pray on Thursday night. That means the night before Friday, if you do not combine that with some other day or with some other night. Suhoor is great blessing in it, and it is also time for acceptance of du'as. Iftar will continue to prosper as long as they hasten the breaking of the fast. Will remain on the right path as long as they hasten the breaking of the fast. Fasting in state of junub, when somebody gets up at dawn but is in state of junub, impurity, he or she should fast. Breaking fast intentionally, free a slave or observe fast for 2 consecutive months or feed 60 poor persons. 2 consecutive months without any break. Permissibility of breaking voluntary fast allowed. Fasting for deceased parents, we should do it as we would discharge any obligation of debt on their part. So we would discharge that. Similarly, we should discharge any remaining fast that they may have as per hadith in both Muslim and Bukhari. What happened to this? Cleaning the teeth. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to clean the teeth many times a day. In one narration, I don't remember whether it is Muslim or Bukhari or some other narration, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the first thing he would do when he entered the house was do miswak. And at least miswak is recommended at the least when we make wudu. Generosity in Ramadan, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was more generous than the fast wind in the month of Ramadan. Laylatul Qadr, Shuja posted in our group about Laylatul Qadr. Taraweeh, that is one of the sunnah of fasting, of the month of Ramadan, that we should take care of. And then today's topic is benefits of fasting. For the sake of time, I won't add to what I have in the slides so that we may possibly complete it. Benefits of fasting. In fact, benefits of fasting are endless. So what I have here is just a sample of the benefits. Some are listed, some of the benefits are listed based on Quran and Sunnah. Fasting helps in gaining taqwa. And that is one of the benefits of fasting that is mentioned in the Quran, in a verse of the Quran towards the end, which is the fear of Allah, that is taqwa, or Allah consciousness or piety, and there are other meanings of taqwa. And we'll talk about taqwa sometime later. Allah Ta'ala made some mistake here. Legislated fasting for gaining taqwa. Allah Ta'ala legislated fasting for gaining taqwa through the following verse. O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed upon you as it has been prescribed upon those before you, so that you may attain taqwa. It becomes easy for us to carry on the remaining 11 months through the taqwa that we gain in this month of fasting if we take it seriously in the manner it should be taken. Taqwa in this case means to make a shield between oneself and Allah's anger and hellfire. Enables us to carry out the orders of Allah. So when we break our fast, we should ask ourselves, and that means at the time of iftar, has this fasting day made us fear and love Allah anymore? Has it brought us to a state that will cause us to be protected from hellfire? Fasting helps in drawing closer to Allah Ta'ala. This is achieved by reciting and reflecting on the Quran during night and day, attending the Taraweeh prayers, remembering Allah Ta'ala, sitting in circles of knowledge, and for those who can, making Umrah because of the tremendous reward of Umrah in this month. Also for those who can, making itikaf, seclusion, the last 10 days of Ramadan, so as to leave all worldly pursuits and seclude oneself in a masjid, just thinking of Allah, wondering about the creation and His endless blessings, so as to make oneself closer to Allah Ta'ala and pray for the salvation of mankind, for one's own salvation and for the salvation of mankind. Number 3, fasting helps in acquiring patience and strong will. Allah Ta'ala has mentioned patience more than 70 times in the Holy Quran. So when one fasts and gives up one's food and drink and one's marital sexual relations during fasting hours, one learns restraint and patience. Fasting nurtures patience with the obedience, as to the obedience of Allah Ta'ala, patience with the desires that Allah has forbidden on the fasting person. So obeying Allah in terms of His do's and obeying Allah in terms of don'ts, and patience with what is experienced with regard to pain, of hunger, thirst, and weakness of the body due to fast. Continuation of that, okay, I won't talk about it. to save time. Number 4, fasting helps in striving for IHSAAN, righteousness and sincerity. That is one of the meanings of IHSAAN, and staying away from RIYAA, showing off. So here is another meaning of IHSAAN, means to worship Allah Ta'ala as if one sees him. And even though one does not see him, he sees us all. So to have the consciousness that I can see Allah, so worship him with that consciousness. And if I cannot bring that consciousness, then that Allah Ta'ala is seeing us, obviously. There's no doubt about that. Hassan al-Basri, rahmatul alayhi, said, by Allah Ta'ala, in the last 20 years, I have not said a word or taken something with my hand or refrained to take something with my hand or stepped forth or stepped back, except that I have thought before I have done any action, that I have thought before I have done any action. Does Allah Ta'ala love this action? Is Allah Ta'ala pleased with this action? That is Allah consciousness. That is the feeling that Allah is seeing me, or I'm seeing Allah, and if not that, then Allah is seeing me. So when we can bring in that consciousness in this month, then that will continue into the remaining 11 months, inshallah. So when one is fasting, one should gain this quality of watching oneself and also staying away from showing off. Continuation. That is why Allah Ta'ala said in Hadith Qudsi, fasting is for me and I reward it. Allah Ta'ala singles out fasting from all other types of worship, saying, fasting is for me, because no one knows whether one is fasting or not, except Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Number 5, fasting helps in refinement of manners, especially those related to truthfulness and discharging trusts. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever does not abandon falsehood in word and action, then Allah Ta'ala does not need that he should leave his food and drink. It is futile. We need to purify our manners, follow the examples of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in very simple terms, but that is very difficult to do. But that should be the objective of our life, following his sunnah. For example, do we give salam to those we don't know and those we do know? We generally do not give salam to those we don't know. Do we follow the manners of Islam by telling the truth always and only telling the truth? It is mentioned that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, I guarantee an abode in paradise for the person who does not lie, even out of fun. Are we responsible? Do we discharge our trusts? Are we sincere and hardworking, as we should be as Muslims? Are we merciful to all creations, all of Allah's creations? Number 6, fasting helps to be more charitable. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the most charitable amongst the people, and he used to be more so in the holy month of Ramadan. The generosity that we talked about earlier. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, he who gives food for a fasting person to break his fast, he will receive the same reward as him without nothing being reduced from the fasting person's reward, even if it is a date or a glass of water. Fasting helps in sensing the unity of the Muslim Ummah. So that is the next one. I think it's number 7. Yeah. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, those of you who will live after me will see many differences. Then you must cling to my sunnah and the sunnah of the rightly guided Khalifas. Hold fast to it and stick to it. In this month, there is a possibility for unity because we all fast together. We break fast together. We worship Allah Ta'ala together. We perform Umrah together. And we pray Salatul Eid together. Therefore, it is possible for Muslims to be a single body, especially in this month. And that should carry on after this month is over. But this will only be achieved when we are true believers and obey Allah Ta'ala and His Messenger. So that is a very important condition. If you are true believers, then there are so many promises of Allah Ta'ala. And you shall surely dominate, for example, over the disbelievers. Number 8, fasting brings passion under control. Passion is the root of all evils, and this can be regulated by the method of fasting. In case of excessive food and drink, it raises its head, that means passion, and makes us commit tremendous havoc in the spiritual world. It is a natural law that the more is the physical weakness of the body, the more is the weakness of passion. For example, a man having a strong urge of sexual passion is ordered to fast. Daily practice of such fast with little quantity of food taken at regular intervals will completely remove the sexual urge. Continuation of number 8. Similar is the case with evil tendencies. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, "O young people, whoever among you can afford marriage, let him marry. And whoever cannot afford it, let him fast, for fasting is a shield for him." Allah Ta'ala created man and his passion. He knows the best medicines for passions, and therefore He has prescribed fasting. He knows us. Number 9, fasting makes the soul shining. Fasting refreshes the soul and cheers it up from its lethargic state, while excessive eating makes it blind and dark, just as excessive water destroys crops. Excessive eating makes a man dull and stupid and deprives a man from the power of thinking. A hungry belly is, however, a fountain of wisdom. This has been the experience of many pious divines. Imam Ghazali said, "Whenever I suffered from hunger, I saw a new ray of knowledge dawning on me." Fasting provides taste in prayer. Fasting provides taste in prayer. Number 10. By the practice of fasting, taste in prayer is enjoyed. A full belly can never taste sweetness of prayers and du'as. His prayer ends only in tongue and does not enter the heart, which is full of food. Number 11, fasting removes false sense of prestige and pride. A hungry man finds himself weak and naturally turns towards the one who is strong. And in this case, I'm talking about Allah Ta'ala. Hunger thus makes a man modest and turns the mind towards the Almighty for help. Number 12, fasting saves time and trouble. It reduces the period of sleep, and thus a great deal of time is saved for work, meaning work for the spiritual world and work for the temporal world. Excessive eating keeps a man engaged very often in taking food and responding to the frequent calls of nature, while this time can be saved by fasting. Number 13, fasting saves money. It saves expenditures on food and other unnecessary enjoyment, and thus helps the economy via saving and investment. Unless the rich people, they consume so much in iftar and the dinner and suhoor that they possibly eat more than they do in normal times. They eat more in Ramadan than they do in normal times. This is highly, and much of the food that is in front of them is wasted. This is highly useful to a worldly man with small means. That means the expenditure that is saved. Number 14, fasting greatly contributes to the preservation of health. The famous American physician, Dr. Dewey, said, "Take the food away from a sick man's stomach, and then you have begun to starve, not the sick man, but the disease." The digestive organs are given some rest later to work with redoubled energy and vigor. Just as a land which is left without cultivation for 1 year brings abundant crops in the year following, or just as a man can work with redoubled vigor after some rest. Spiritual progress depends on a healthy mind, which again depends on a healthy body. Therefore, the value of fasting for preservation of health is very important. Continuation of number 14, Luqman advised his son saying, "O my son, if the stomach is full, meditation stops, wisdom is withheld, and the organs become lazy in worship." Hazrat Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu narrates that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, and I mentioned this in a previous session, keep fasting, you will remain healthy. And the health benefits of fasting has been proven by modern science. Number 15, fasting teaches equality of human being, which is not even witnessed in prayer. A king may pray with a beggar in the mosque, but at home, he may lead quite a different life by taking food at pleasure and having sexual relations with women. Fasting, however, places all men, rich and poor, on the same pitiful plight of hunger and does not allow anybody to take food and drink or to have sexual relations in daytime. So everybody is on the same plane. Fasting teaches sympathy for the hungry, number 16. Fasting is the only thing that creates a sense of pangs of the hungry man in the mind of the rich. Thus, this sense creates a spirit of kindness to the poor and the distressed. It also gives rise to the thought of how the people will fare on the resurrection day when they will feel the greatest urge of hunger and thirst. Fasting reminds oneself of the grace of Allah. Allah the Almighty ends the verse relating to fasting saying, "And perhaps you will be grateful, and perhaps you will be grateful." When we feel the pangs of hunger, we can better realize the condition of the poor people, and perhaps there will be greater sense of gratefulness in us. Continuation of that, fasting is the only thing that creates a sense of pangs of the hungry man in the mind of the rich. What happened? Thus, this sense creates a spirit of kindness to the poor and the distressed. Okay, this somehow showed again. Number 17, fasting teaches moral discipline. In fact, it is a training ground for the lesson that man, whatever his rank and position, is prepared to suffer the greatest privation and the hardest trial for the sake of Allah Ta'ala. This lesson is learned from day to day. This practice really contributes to the moral development of man. Fasting accustoms a man to face the hardships of life and increases his power of resistance. Fasting keeps faith in Allah Ta'ala a living force. Continuation of 17, a fasting man can easily satisfy himself by taking food or drink in the inner recess of his house, but he doesn't. He feels that Allah Ta'ala is near him and is always seeing him, and so he restrains himself. Thus, the existence of Allah Ta'ala is felt closer. This is not for once or twice, but regularly for a whole month. In this way, faith in Allah Ta'ala is kept alive and a new consciousness of a higher life is awakened. One of the righteous predecessors said, the lesser form of fasting is to abstain from food and drink. Jabir radiallahu anhu said, if you fast, then let your hearing So there is also a fasting of the hearing and the sight, fasting of the sight and tongue, fasting of the tongue, abstain from lying and the prohibitions. Keep away from what is prohibited. Do not harm your neighbor, and let tranquility and solemnity befall you on the day of fasting. Do not make your day of fasting resemble the day on which you break your fast. So it is a lesser form of fasting, which is fasting in terms of food and drink. The bigger form of fasting is fasting of the hearing, of the sight, of the tongue, not going towards what is prohibited towards us, not touching what is prohibited for us. The people whose morals or temperaments remain unchanged by Ramadan, and they even get worse and get angry for trivial reasons, do not know the essence of fasting. Number 18, getting used to order and punctuality. When Ramadan comes, it gives us a great lesson in how to maintain punctuality and order. There is a time for fasting and there is a time for breaking the fast. If the fasting person does not comply with these times and deliberately eats food, say 2 minutes before sunset, that invalidates his fasting. So it brings order and punctuality. As other forms of worship bring order and punctuality, for example, prayers, the 5 prayers. Number 19, reminding the purpose of man's creation, why we have been created. Al-Munawwi explained, fasting has been prescribed to suppress the desires of the souls and cut the reasons of slavery to and worship of desires. That we do not worship our desires, our ego. Had they kept practicing these things all the time, things would have enslaved them and cut them from the way of Allah Ta'ala. That means if we obeyed our desires, we would be worshiping our desires. Fasting removes the causes of worshiping other than Allah Ta'ala and grants freedom from slavery to beloved things. We get freedom from slavery of those things that we love. That is because freedom means that man possesses things, not the opposite. Things do not possess us. We do not become masters of dunya or our ego. If these things possessed him, he would be reversing wisdom, and the superior would be turned to inferior, and the higher turned to be the lower. We do not become slave of our desires, nor of dunya or of shaitan. We become slave of Allah. Number 19, reminding the purpose of man's creation, continuation. Thus, the Muslim must realize that he's a slave of Allah alone, a slave of Allah in Ramadan and at other times, during Ramadan and at other times, a slave of Allah at work and at home, a slave of Allah in the masjid and in the marketplace. Not that we worship in the masjid and then outside, it is up to us how we act. No, outside the masjid or outside salat, it is the same thing. Allah is the Lord. He is the Malik. We are the slave. If you calculate the time that you dedicate to Allah Ta'ala in your life, you would know your status and honor in the sight of Allah. To the extent that we dedicate to Allah Ta'ala, to the extent that we give value to His commandments, to the extent that we honor and respect His commandments, to that extent Allah Ta'ala will honor and value us, give honor and give value to us, and give status to us. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, whoever wants to know his position with Allah, let him see the position of Allah inside him. What is inside me? What is the position of Allah inside me? That will be the position of me with Allah Ta'ala. Number 20, provides a chance for a change. This is one of the most important lessons to be learned from this month. It provides us for a chance, opportunity for change. Number 21, fasting trains the Muslim to look forward to the hereafter. The fasting person relinquishes some of the worldly matters in hope of the reward in the hereafter. He abstains from food, drink, and intercourse during the day of Ramadan in expectation of the great reward on the day of resurrection. This teaches us an important lesson in coaching the heart of the fasting person in belief in the unseen and the hereafter, attachment to it, and refraining from the immediate pleasures of this life, which lead to laziness and lagging behind. People with materialistic standards do not see in fasting anything more than deprivation of the pleasure of eating, drinking, and sexual intercourse. So that is for the materialistic person. So highlights, fasting helps in gaining taqwa. Fasting helps in drawing closer to Allah Ta'ala. Fasting helps in acquiring patience and strong will. Fasting helps in striving for ihsaan and staying away from RIYAA, showing off. Fasting helps in refinement of manners, especially those related to truthfulness and discharging trusts. Fasting helps to be more charitable. Fasting helps in sensing the unity of the Muslim Ummah. Fasting brings passion under control. Fasting makes the soul shining. Fasting provides taste in prayer. Fasting removes false sense of prestige and pride. Fasting saves time and trouble. Fasting saves money. Fasting greatly contributes to the preservation of health. Fasting teaches equality of human being, which is not even witnessed in prayer. Fasting teaches sympathy for the hungry. Fasting teaches moral discipline. Fasting makes us get used to order and punctuality. Fasting reminds of the purpose of man's creation. Fasting provides a chance for change. Fasting trains the Muslim to look forward to the hereafter. So 21 benefits are listed here, and I will not take time for dua so much. Allahumma ameen, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. La ilaha illallah al-halimul kareem, subhanallahi rabbil arshil azim, walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, as'aluka mujibati rahmatika wa azaima maghfiratika wa ghanimata min kulli birri wa salamata min kulli ism, la tadallana zamban illa ghafartahu, wa la hamman illa farajtahu, wa la marizan illa shifaitahu, wa la daynan illa kazaitahu, wa la mujahidan illa nasartahu, wa la mazluman illa nasartahu, wa la musliman illa rahimtahu, wa la ولا حاجة هي لك رضا إلا قضيتها يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم أسألك من خير ما سألك منه نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ونعوذ بك من شر ما استعاذك منه نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. أنت المستعان وعليك البلاغ ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. ربي أني مثاني يدور وأنت أرحم الراحمين. ربي أنزل لي منزلا مباركا وأنت خير المنزلين. ربي ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنا من الظالمين. اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم أسألك إيمانا اللهم أسألك إيمانا كاملا يقينا صادقا علما نافعا رزقا واسعا عملا صالحا حياة طيبة دعاء مستجاب لسانا ذاكرا قلبا خاشعا رزقا حلالا طيبا شفاء من كل داء يا كاشف الحاجات يا رافع الدرجات يا حلال المشكلات يا موجب الدعوات برحمتك نستغيث يا أول الأولين يا آخر الآخرين يا أكرم الأكرمين يا أرحم الراحمين يا راحم المساكين يا ذي القوة المتين. আল্লাহ তুমি আমাদের নেক হাজত পুরা করে দিও আল্লাহ, আমাদেরকে বিপদ আপদ থেকে দূরে রেখো আল্লাহ, অসুখ বিসুখের থেকে দূরে রেখো আল্লাহ, সমস্ত মানুষকে হেদায়েত করো, হেফাজত করো, রহমত করো, মাগফিরাত করো আল্লাহ। ও আল্লাহ ও আল্লাহ আমাদেরকে আপন করে নিও আল্লাহ, তোমার শান মতো আমাদের দান করো আল্লাহ, তোমার শান মতো আমাদেরকে হেফাজত করো আল্লাহ। سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين وحق لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. آمين يا رب العالمين. آمين يا رب العالمين. آمين يا رب العالمين. عليك البلاغ ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم.